The microphone? Oh, yeah. Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to our winter meeting of the Democratic National Committee. I hereby call this meeting to order. Please stand if you are able for the members of the William P. Roach American Legion Post 21 and the presentation of colors. For more than 100 years, Post 21 has been serving Southwest Philadelphia by creating a safe environment for the community and a place that veterans can call home.
Time. March. Detail. Ho. Left. Face.
Before we begin, I'd like to thank all veterans, members of the military, and military families. Will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. You may be seated. We will now have an introduction of the invocation by our Vice Chair, Henry Munoz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Democrats. You know, when I was a little boy growing up in South Texas, the son of two union organizers, I understood pretty quickly that the week was for school and the weekend was for helping people. And I spent a lot of time on picket lines and in community organizing meetings. And I remember one Saturday morning, not so different from this morning, not this quite a nice place, but I was walking behind two migrant farm workers on a march for justice. and one of them was holding the flag of the United States, the Star-Spangled Banner, and the other one was holding a picture of the Virgen de Guadalupe. And I understood in that moment that the movement of a people requires the presence of patriotism and the guiding spirit of the Lord. This morning, as we gather in this old city, in this new year, we're joined by a great leader by the name of Right Reverend Daniel Gutierrez. Daniel is the 16th bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Pennsylvania, but a native of New Mexico. He's a small businessman, and he's in charge of one of the most prestigious, hardworking congregations in this state and in this nation. So it's my privilege as we begin this movement of a people to bring Father Gutierrez to the stage to help us start this movement in the right way. Daniel?
Good morning. Just want to say good morning to the fellow citizens of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And it's a blessing to journey with you. And then, of course, to my home, de Nuevo Mexico, New Mexico. So let us pray. O most holy one, we offer gratitude for the ability to gather in community and the opportunity to serve. Bless this time with wisdom, discernment, courage, listening, and compassion. Center the work of these faithful in the loftiest dreams and the highest ideals of humankind, so that all of your creation can flourish. Not far from this gathering, our country's founders declared that all are created equal. Lord, forgive us for falling far short of this dream. Let us strive together to build a nation where no distinctions exist, no differences based on age, race, color, faith, gender, place of birth, language, who they love, or how they identify. Let us strive to live into the freedom declared in this great. All your children are free, free from terror, gun violence, hatred, racism, misogyny, marginalization, poverty, illness, and indifference, where your precious earth is free of destruction. Open their hearts and eyes and all the people of this land so that we may see the beauty of one another. Let us dedicate our lives, prayers, and work to the good of all humankind. We ask for your blessing on this day and in the following days. And let us say, Amen.
Thank you again, Bishop. Members, our land acknowledgement today will be led by Dylan Baca, and Dylan will be accompanied by Native American Caucus Chair Clara Pratt. Dylan Baca was born and raised in Arizona, where he is a citizen of the White Mountain Apache Tribe and Navajo Nation. Dylan currently resides in New York City, where he attends Columbia University. Dylan is a recipient of the Arizona 18 Under 18 Award, as well as the Unity 25 Under 25 Award. In the spring of 2019, Dylan started the Indigenous Peoples Initiative to create pathways forward for future generations of indigenous people. Since the organization's founding in 2019, Dylan has worked to create policy and advise everyone from tribal leaders to lawmakers on indigenous rights within the state of Arizona and across our nation. In addition to serving as chief executive for the Indigenous Peoples Initiative, Dylan currently sits on the board for the White Mountain Democrats, Camp Grace, and is a youth advisor to the Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction. Please welcome our friend, Dylan Baca.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dylan Baca. I'm a citizen of the White Mountain Apache Tribe and Navajo Nation. My relatives reside in Northeast Arizona in Canyon de Chelly and the White Mountain Apache Tribe in Sibique, Arizona. It is great to be speaking with you today as we currently stand on the traditional territory of the Lenape people here in Philadelphia. Since time immemorial, the Lenape people have built vibrant and diverse cultures, safeguarding land, language, spirit, knowledge, and tradition across generations. These are the people that had life in societies here long before colonizers came to North America. These were the people who called this area home prior to Philadelphia and neighboring cities and states' foundings. I recognize and acknowledge them to remind myself that this part of our journey, here on their ancestral land, is resolute to their truth, so we can live ours. I tell you who I come from and where I come from. I tell you where I am and whose land I stand upon. I tell you because these things matter. Our ancestors, the land, our origin stories, our histories. As I wrote this land acknowledgement, I reflected on my childhood. When I was little, I would often go to Sibique, Arizona, where my mom's side of the family is from. On one particularly scorching summer day, my great-grandmother and I were walking under a large walnut tree. Adjacent to the tree sat an archaeological site. I recall when it would rain, it would unearth pottery, beads, and tools. While we were walking, my great-grandmother picked up a beautiful black and white piece of pottery and gave it to me, closed my hand, and said, "Never forget where you come from." My great-grandmother was a quiet leader, like many of us. Though their names may not be known, they work hard to support their families and sacrifice for their children. All they attempt to do is the right thing. My great-grandmother was born in 1923 on the Fort Apache Indian Reservation. She was born a year after Fort Apache was closed and a year before Native Americans were considered citizens of the United States, a country where we have inhabited this land since time immemorial, yet have not been able to call ourselves citizens until 1924. While change came slowly during my great-grandmother's life, she saw Native Americans gain citizenship, gain the right to vote, retain sovereignty, but also see ourselves represented for the first time within the corridors of power and the halls of Congress. Similar stories can be reflected across many indigenous families within our nation. These stories show us just how fragile progress is, and that we must continue to stay vigilant to protect against the darker currents of our nation's history that can unfortunately rise again. In the history of the Haudenosaunee, the peacemaker stated, "When you sit in council for the welfare of all the people, think not of yourself, nor your family, nor your generation." The peacemaker instructed us to make our decisions on behalf of 7 generations. We as a society are perpetually in transit between a past that forms its memory and a vision of the future that inspires its evolution. As leaders, we must think and act at the intersectionality of 2 axes, the first between the past and the future, the second between the abiding values and aspirations of those we lead. For our strategies and ideas to inspire our communities, we must serve as educators, communicating objectives, assuaging doubts, and rallying support. While there are a plethora of challenges that face our nation, we must remain optimistic and willing to face the challenges ahead. I believe that optimism requires us to see the world as it is, but we must believe and behave in a way that creates a better future for generations to come. Though we may feel overwhelmed, we must continue to remind ourselves that none of us have the right to sit back and expect the world and global community to get better. We have an obligation to do everything we can to set our trajectory in the right direction. My fellow Democrats, reflecting on our past helps us to recognize the mistakes we have made and learn to build from them to become better people and societies. The fabric of our nation is a constant work in progress, and loving this country requires us as citizens to speak up for what is right. It is my hope that we can put our differences aside and work together with cooperation and mutual respect for one another to make this country one that is truly aligned with democratic principles. Though a clearer view of history can be uncomfortable and will shake us from familiar narratives, it is precisely because of that discomfort that we learn and grow and harness our collective power to make this nation stronger. The success and compassion of future generations will rely on establishing a policy of truth. Native American cultures are not dead. Our civilizations have not been destroyed. Our present tense is evolving rapidly and as creatively as everyone else's. Thank you.
That was beautiful, Dylan. Thank you again. My friends, I now want to introduce DNC Secretary Jason Ray. Secretary Ray and his team do such an excellent job of keeping our membership informed, and I'm thankful to him for all that he's done to make this meeting a tremendous success. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Jason Ray.
Well, good morning, Democrats. It has been so great to see so many of you these last few days as we've gathered here in Philadelphia to celebrate the accomplishments of the first 2 years of the Biden-Harris administration, to celebrate our victories in 2022, and to plan for 2024. Since we last gathered in September in Maryland, we've had a number of new DNC members who have been elected from their state. So if you're a new member of the DNC since our last meeting, please stand. We are excited to welcome all of you into our DNC family. Mr. Chair, we have traveled from coast to coast and around the globe to be here to conduct the important business of our party, and I'm pleased to report that we do indeed have a quorum of members present.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, members, for making sure we have a quorum. I'd now like to introduce Maryland DNC member and chair of the DNC's AAPI caucus, Bell Leon Hong, to acknowledge Lunar New Year with all of us.
Can you see me? 早晨，新年快樂，恭喜發財。In my native Cantonese, this means good morning, Happy New Year, and we wish you happiness and good fortune. During the Lunar New Year, we greet our friends and family with good wishes of good fortune and prosperity. This year, we celebrate the Year of the Rabbit, or the cat for the Vietnamese, which is the fourth animal in the cycle. We name an animal for each year in a 12-year cycle. The Year of the Rabbit is supposed to be a lucky year, a year of harmony, peace, and a year of building relationships and compromise. Throughout the centuries and all around the country and across the world, wherever there are Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, and other people in the East Asian diaspora, we celebrate the beginning of a new year with joy, with laughter, with dragon dances or lion dances to ward off evil, with lively music, with firecrackers and firework, with red envelope or humpao, usually containing cash for our children, and with wonderful holiday food, with new clothing, following traditions handed down through the generations. This is an aspirational time, a hopeful time, a time of joy and happiness. This is part of our culture, and we prepare for this celebration days before the new year. And if you're like me, you're a cleaning dervish all the way until the 11th hour and 59th minute of the day before the new year. And we pay off our debts so that we can welcome the new year with a clean house and with a clean slate. And we rejoice in the expectation for what the new year will bring. So let me conclude by wishing you Sanin Fai Lok, Gong Hei Fat Choi. My wish for all of us is that our years ahead be auspicious, happy, and plentiful. And most importantly, may we resolve to continue to fight to preserve our democracy, to fight for freedom, to choose, to love, and to exist. May we fight for justice for all, and may we not accept as a new normal waking up to another Lunar New Year day, to the horrific shooting like in Monterey Park or Half Moon Bay. May we not accept as a new normal the horrific hate-filled actions of a few in Memphis, Minnesota, Oklahoma, or DC. May we not accept as a new normal shootings because of the color of our skin, where we were born, what we believe in, or whom we choose to love. May we as Democrats remember that we must fight for freedom to love, to choose to live. May we be united in our fight for good, and may we remember that together we are stronger. Thank you. Before I go, I want to invite you to a Lunar New Year celebration that the DNC AAPI caucus and the Pennsylvania Democratic Party and AAPI caucus, and the newest, I would say, AAPI caucus in Pennsylvania will be hosting after this general session. Thank you so much.
And if you all know anything about parties and celebrations planned by Belle, the food is going to be amazing. Thank you, Belle, for those important reflections. I'd now like to introduce Michigan DNC member and chair of the DNC's Black Caucus, Virgie Rollins, to acknowledge Black History Month with all of us.
Happy birthday. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, good afternoon, good morning, Democrats. Good morning. It's Black History Month. And we just had our Black History breakfast. If you missed it, you missed a treat, because I say we're standing on the shoulders of one of the greatest living legends in the history is Leader Clyburn. And we had such a great time this morning, and Senator Vincent Hughes. Every Black History Month, we honor in the Black Caucus two great Black Caucus members who have served this party and who have been instrumental in Black history of this party. And today we celebrate Dr. C. Dolores Tucker, who was the first Secretary in the United States of Secretary of State, not only in Pennsylvania, but in the US. She also was the first commission on the status of women ensured equal rights, amendment, adoption, voter registration by mail. She was one of the original founders of the DNC Black Caucus. And because of that, she was the first African-American woman to serve as the president of the National Federation of Democratic Women, which I served as the national president of the Federation of Democratic Women. And now as the Black Caucus chair, she was instrumental in bringing me into the Black Caucus. So we highlight her today, and one of the greatest secretary bylaws co-chair, Secretary Alexis Herman. Alexis Herman, as a bylaws chair and a co-chair, was instrumental in making sure that we have black at-large members to the DNC, more black participation on the delegates going to the national convention. If it was not for her, we would not have as many delegates coming to the DNC meetings every DNC. She also was appointed by Bill Clinton as the Secretary of the Labor, and she took on from making the minimum wage from 90 cents to $5.15. She fought discrimination on boards and commissions, and especially on Coca-Cola. So, you know, we would not have as many African Americans serving on these boards and commission if it was not for Secretary Herman. So we celebrate her today. But I'll be remiss if I didn't talk about Tyree Nichols and all the shootings that have participated on the hands of people who are supposed to protect us. Here we are in 2023, and we still mourning the loss of black lives by the police. And we got it, and when I look at this morning on TV, Republicans wearing assault weapons pins, that is insulting to our community. So and when I hear governors banning books on Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, and you know who he is, we got a lot to do, more work to get done. And so as we celebrate Black history, let's lift up, let's start telling our stories, let's start coming together. So as Bell said, to come and work as a united front so we can ban all of these assault weapons and stop the killings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, happy Black History Month to each and every one. It is a great month to learn so much about the history of African Americans and all that they have done in this great nation. Thank you again, Madam Chair. Now I bring to the stage someone who works so hard, has a lot of titles that indicate how hard he works. Our DNC Vice Chair, the President of the ASDC, and the Chair of the Minnesota DFL, my good friend Ken Martin.
Happy birthday, Doctor. Thank you, Chairman. Democrats, I am pleased to be able to introduce Pennsylvania's United States Senator Bob Casey. From Pittsburgh to Philadelphia and everywhere in between, Bob Casey has championed the concerns of everyday Pennsylvanians working hard to achieve the American dream. In the Senate, he works tirelessly, day in and day out, to improve health care, funding for early childhood education, and to create good paying union jobs right here in Pennsylvania and all around the country. He's a fantastic United States Senator. Democrats, please give a warm round of applause for Pennsylvania's Senior Senator Bob Casey. And he's joining us virtually.
Hello, everyone at the Democratic National Committee. Thanks for coming to Philadelphia. I wish I could be there in person with you, but I'm grateful that you've gathered in Philadelphia to help us celebrate the achievements of our party, and I hope for some of you to celebrate the Eagles being in the Super Bowl. So I must say, first and foremost, go Birds. But thank you for gathering in the great city of Philadelphia and honoring us with your presence. The presence, of course, of President Biden and Vice President Harris. We're grateful for not only their willingness to appear, but also their great leadership for our country. At a time when our country needs Democratic leadership, we're grateful that we have Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries in the House leading us in Washington, and all of the great elected officials and DNC members who give our party such strength. I want to especially salute and commend the work of our chairman, Chairman Jamie Harrison, for his leadership as chair of the party, and also for the work that he's done in state after state to help us win elections from the opening days of his time as chairman. I know personally what he did to help us in Pennsylvania, for example, to win great victories in 2022, to elect John Fetterman to the United States Senate, the first time we've had two elected Democratic senators since the 1940s, and also the work that Jamie Harrison and DNC members did in addition to the Senate race to help elect Josh Shapiro as our governor, and the great work that he's doing and his team is doing, and also to help us on the ground in state legislative races, to give the Democrats in the General Assembly, the State House, a chance to have a majority for the first time in a long, long time. And so many other efforts that Jamie has undertaken to help Pennsylvania and to help us win. I don't have to catalog for each of you the achievements of the Biden-Harris administration working with a Democratic Congress, the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, the PACT legislation that will help veterans who were traumatized by the burn pits in places like Iraq to finally get the health care that they need. The Respect for Marriage Act, the great work that was done to pass that. The Inflation Reduction Act, which in addition to pushing back on climate change, will help us reduce prescription drug prices for the first time ever. And the most recent legislation, the Appropriations Bill, where Democrats were unified in supporting programs across the board that lift up families and help so many Americans. An appropriations bill that 87% of congressional Republicans voted no on, voted for zero funding for hundreds and hundreds of programs that are important to our people. So when you add it all up, it's about rebuilding communities and helping families. It's about revitalizing manufacturing jobs and investing in the economy of the future. It's about investing in our children and our families and protecting our seniors. And of course, it's also about reducing the cost of prescription drugs, as I mentioned, from the Inflation Reduction Act. So many efforts undertaken because of the leadership of President Biden and Vice President Harris, and all the work that you all do as members of the DNC to help them do that. I want to commend as well our partners in labor, the men and women of organized labor who work night and day along with the Democratic Party for these legislative achievements as well as the election victories that we've been able to enjoy. I know that many of you in our state, or by extension, even if you're not in Pennsylvania, will be helping us in 2023, as you will around the country, in races like judicial races in Pennsylvania, preparing for the big races in 2024. So I thank you as a citizen, as a Pennsylvania Democrat, and as a United States Senator representing Pennsylvania. We're honored you're in Philadelphia. God bless your work, and thanks for coming to see us in Pennsylvania.
We are so appreciative of all the hard work and effort of Senator Casey. And folks, I want you to know Senator Casey is up for re-election in 2024. And that means, we all know what that means. We got to do everything that we can to make sure that he gets re-elected and we send him back to the United States Senate. Thank you, Senator Casey, for all that you do. Folks, I'm pleased to ask our Resolutions Committee co-chair, Rich Fitzgerald, to present the report of the Resolutions Committee. And I'd like to take a moment to thank Rich and his co-chair, Patrice Taylor, for their leadership and commitment to the party. The Resolutions Committee report includes resolutions that make important statements of our values, like protecting women's freedom to make their own health care decisions, protecting and expanding voting rights, and our commitment to unions, as well as our support of President Biden, who had one of the best midterms for a sitting president's party in recent history. And delivered historic accomplishments for the American people. and for his recommendation on the 2024 presidential nominating calendar. In addition, this resolution package includes some resolutions honoring several of our Democrats who have since departed. One, Roz Wyman of California. Roz was one of our longest-serving DNC members. She was a trailblazer, youngest person elected to city council in LA. She was the chair of the 1984 Democratic National Convention. I remember when I first became chair, one of the first calls I got was from Roz, who said, I want to stay on the DNC because I still have so much more that I know I can accomplish. We will dearly, dearly miss Roz and all of the spirit that she has brought to this party. In addition, we are honoring Dr. Jeffrey Clark. Dr. Jeffrey Clark is the husband of Martha Fuller Clark from the great state of New Hampshire. Dr. Clark did so much in his community. The Clarks were just a power couple in terms of doing so much there. Martha, I want you to know that nobody will miss Dr. Clark more than you, but we will miss Dr. Clark because we know how important he was to you. And these next two are folks that I really got an opportunity to know well. One is my dear friend who is gone too early, Mayor Terrence Colberth from Johnston, South Carolina. Terrence was political director for Cory Booker's race in South Carolina. Terrence died right before his 40th birthday. This man had a big heart, a gentle teddy bear. His laugh would light up a room. Terrence was a dear, dear friend, and he always had the right timing. He always knew when to call me. I would just, out of the blue, something would be going on. I would be having a horrible day, and guess who's on the phone calling me up? It's Terrence Colberth. We're going to miss my friend dearly. The other is someone from the labor world, but I didn't meet her in her labor capacity. Some of you may know the trailblazer of Geraldine Boykin. Geraldine is a dear friend. I first met her in the Congressional Black Caucus political boot camp, along with Cindy Bass, who Cindy's here. Cindy, you remember Miss Geraldine. She, let me tell you, Miss Geraldine, straight, no chaser. She was a fighter. She used to tell me stories about her marching with Dr. King and all, and she said, you know, Jamie, they used to keep me at the back of the march because Dr. King would say, Geraldine, you get in too much trouble, and not good trouble. She even told me about the time, I don't even know if I should tell this story, but I'm going to. Geraldine Boykin told me the story about the time that she came back home to North Carolina. And the little kids wanted to see Santa Claus. And at that time, it was sort of it was still a segregated atmosphere. And there was a Santa Claus, and there was these little black kids, her nieces and nephews, who wanted to see Santa. And she called him Santa Claus, wanted to see Santa Claus. And they said, oh, the kids were so excited. They wanted to see Santa Claus, but he wouldn't come over to talk to them because they were black. He would only talk to the white kids. Again, straight, no chaser. Ms. Boykin said she saw how hurt the kids were, how disappointed they were. And then she said to the Santa Claus person, she said, hey, Santa Claus, come here. Come here. She said, you see these little kids over here? They want to see you. She said, you need to talk to him. And he just brushed her off. And then one more time, she said, Santa Claus, I said, come over here. These kids want to see you. Santa Claus, if you don't go talk to those kids, I'm going to mess you up. Santa Claus looked up, and went over there and talked to those kids. You never said no to Geraldine Boykin. She was a trailblazer in the labor movement. And I'm going to miss her dearly. She supported me so much when I ran for the Senate. But this resolution package includes tributes to all of these amazing Democrats and trailblazers. Now I will turn it over to Rich Fitzgerald, our resolutions co-chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And following the Pennsylvania theme in our esteemed senior senator, Senator Casey, who's not only been elected and reelected again, has said he's up again next year. But I guess Pennsylvania didn't get the memo that there was supposed to be a red wave last year. Because in Pennsylvania, we had a blue wave. Not only, as Senator Casey said, did we elect the second Democratic United States Senator for the first time in 80 years, we also broke with tradition, and when Governor Wolf was leaving office, in which normally you would flip from Democrat to Republican, Republican to Democrat, Josh Shapiro, Governor Shapiro, who you're going to hear from in a little bit, so overwhelmingly won his election against a MAGA Republican that he carried in with him the General Assembly for the first time in over a decade. We're going to have a Democratic General Assembly. And in celebration of Black History Month, we elected Austin Davis, the first black lieutenant governor in Pennsylvania's history. I want to thank Chairman Harrison for the opportunity to serve as co-chair of the Resolutions Committee with my fellow co-chair Patrice Taylor, who was unable to be here today but sends her well wishes. On behalf of the Resolutions Committee, I want to express our appreciation to the members who submitted resolutions. I also want to thank the DNC staff who worked tirelessly with Patrice and myself to verify the accuracy of the resolutions and to make sure that they comply with our party's bylaws. Before we review the report, I want to talk a little about the Resolutions Committee process. Resolutions must be submitted 21 days in advance of the meeting. Pursuant to our rules, proposed resolutions need to be in alignment with the party's policies and our principles expressed in the platform or honoring a recently deceased prominent Democrat. The Resolutions Committee met on Thursday, February 2nd to consider 37 resolutions sent to DNC members in the Secretary's 14-day mailing, along with 3 urgent and timely resolutions. Each of the 40 resolutions were considered by the Resolutions Committee, and the sponsors were heard. 24 message and 14 commemorative resolutions were overwhelmingly supported by members and are recommended by the committee for approval by the full DNC. 2 message resolutions are not recommended by the committee due to the lack of a motion. Included in the resolutions package recommended for your approval is the resolutions recommitting ourselves to meaningful reforms and accountability following Tyree Nichols' tragic death. Resolutions in support of Black History Month and the Lunar New Year. A resolution honoring our departing House leadership team, and a resolution that condemns dark money in our electoral system. We also have a resolution in support of President Biden, his historic agenda, and his re-election. With that, Mr. Chair, I move the approval of the Resolutions Committee by the Resolutions Committee. Thank you.
The Resolutions Committee has given its report and moved its approval by the membership. Is there any discussion? Seeing no further questions or comment, yes. Please state your name and state for the record. You come to the microphone.
Hello, Leano Sharon, delegate from Michigan. On the resolutions, at the Executive Committee last Thursday, Chair Harrison and his team presented data on the last several elections. The presentation was excellent. Many thanks to you and your team for the great job that you did on that. It was also very explicit, and pretty much one of the presenters put it this bluntly. Young progressives aren't an option. They're an absolute necessity for victory. According to the Executive Committee presentation, 70% of young people are progressive. We won them by 26 points in 2022. To win in 2024, we need to win them by at least 23 points. In 2018, I helped organize one of the largest party recruitment drives in our state's history, nearly doubling membership. I've seen those numbers drop back down to less than we started with because progressives, particularly young progressives, are leaving in droves. I've talked with young progressives and others leaving. The most common reasons, evident in nearly every case, boil down to two things. One, an institutional culture of egregiously anti-democratic rule-breaking. Two, an institutional culture of rampant disrespect for new members generally and progressives particularly, sometimes written directly into the rules, often exacerbated by ageism against young people. I can give you example after example of both. I've documented many in detail on my website, michiganprogressive.com. If we want young progressives to join our party and stay, we have to change our institutional culture. If we want to win, this isn't an option. It's as much of an absolute necessity as winning young progressives by 23 points. To stem the bleeding, at the next meeting, I urged the DNC to pass the dark money ban in primaries. When the ban wasn't even debated at the last DNC meeting, several young progressives asked me, if the DNC Resolutions Committee isn't even willing to debate banning dark money in primaries where they aren't competing against Republicans, isn't that explicitly rigging the elections for corporate candidates with millions in dark money and against progressives who don't take dark money? Aren't they explicitly rigging the primaries against us? That's exactly what the material effect will be, even if some have other reasons for opposing the ban. We have to decide which is more important, to protect the power of big dollar donors and the establishment, or two, doing everything in our power to defeat fascism in 2024 and beyond. The choice is ours. How we choose announces our values and priorities to the world. The ban on dark money in primaries will be reintroduced at the next meeting. I encourage everyone who wants to win in 2024 and beyond to support it. Thank you very much.
So much, Liano, for your remarks. Any further discussion? Seeing no further questions or comments, we will move to a vote on the motion to approve the report on the Resolutions Committee. All those in favor of approving the report on the Resolutions Committee say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the Resolutions Committee report is adopted. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Patrice. On the next item of business, I would like to introduce two good friends of mine to present reports on the DNC's finances. National Finance Chair Chris Corge and Treasurer Virginia McGregor have been working tirelessly. While this is traditionally a time that giving slows down and campaigns recover, the team has been leading us in efforts to support our world-class infrastructure following a stellar midterms. They make sure that we have the resources we need to have a strong foundation for our party. With that, Chris and Virginia, floor is yours.
Good morning, Democrats. It's great to be here. Before I get to the substantive portion of my report, I have to tell you something that happened to me last night. I woke up about 5 o'clock in the morning thinking, it was kind of a nightmare because I was thinking about the MAGA crowd. And to me, I lovingly refer to the MAGA crowd as the misguided, apathetic, grouchy, angry Americans who are guided by their Bible of misinformation. In fact, I'm wondering when they will learn how to Google, to be quite frank with you. If you were to listen to this crowd, you would think that our President Biden, the American President Biden, and Vice President Harris are literally single-handedly destroying our democracy as we speak. So I couldn't help, and I heard this from James Carville, I couldn't help but wonder, why are these people so angry? What is it that has really pissed them off? So I started to think about it, And I said, well, could it be that they are just pissed off that unemployment rate is the lowest in 50 years at 3.4%? Or is it that more people in the United States have health care today than ever in the history of the United States? Is it that we passed the largest, with the help of some Republicans, the largest infrastructure package in the history of the United States? Is it that the rescue plan that stopped our economy from tanking was passed? Or is it the fact, and I think this one really gets them angry, is that inflation has gone down for 6 months and is at 6.5%, and at the end of this year, I guarantee it'll be at 3%. So I say, let them pick their poison of what really upsets them. But I can tell you about our success while they continue on their negative path to disbelieving in America. We are starting this year off in a better position than we have for I don't know how many decades. I've been here 4 years as the finance chair. When I came on board, Tom Perez, and with the help of our chairman, Jamie Harrison, we set out to institutionalize the DNC, to make sure that at the end of a cycle, we just don't go fire everyone because we don't have enough money. And we have a stable organization, and Sam Cornell and their entire group should be thanked right now, and I really applaud them for the job they've done. So let's talk about the last cycle real quickly. We raised $100 million in major donor money and $170 million in grassroots supporters, with over 900,000 individual donors. That is more than twice as much as we've ever raised in a midterm cycle. And let me tell you, the common thread between both of those has been that the president and the vice president have hit the road. As soon as the pandemic got to a point where they could go out there and have events, they were amazing. They never said no. The president picks up the phone, calls donors, has had several calls with our National Finance Committee, and reaches out all the time through social media and through mobilization. Both the president and vice president have been amazing, and that is the reason why we have performed so successfully. And we could never have done it without the leadership of our chair. Jamie Harrison has set this place on fire and should be congratulated. Thank you, Jamie. So we have a lot of work in front of us, but folks, we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it bigger than we ever have done it in the past. So I want to ask you all to do one thing for me. Today, our chairman gave a large amount of money to the DNC and is a member not only because he's the chair, but because he's a giver to the National Finance Committee. I'm asking each and every one of you, it's an obligation of every member of the DNC to invest in our organization. I don't care how much you invest. It doesn't matter. I mean, I prefer a large check, to be honest with you. But I would ask each of you, you can text right now to donate 43367. Just go ahead, go on your phone. Do not leave here without giving, please. It means a lot to major donors when I can tell them that the 400 plus members of the DNC are also investors in this. So let me say it again, write it down, 43367. Go online and donate now. I want to thank you all for your efforts. Believe me, without all of you, our reality and this country would not be where it is today. Thank you so much.
Okay, this is a short person's microphone. Put this down a little bit. Hi, everybody. I'm Virginia McGregor, and I am your DNC treasurer. And as a lifelong resident of Scranton, Pennsylvania, I'm so thrilled to welcome everyone to Pennsylvania. You know, my family came to Scranton during the potato famine, and we've never left. Our family has lived on the same street in Scranton for over 100 years. And by the way, that's the same street that President Biden grew up on and Senator Casey. And I do want to acknowledge our terrific mayor, Paige Cognetti. The first woman ever elected mayor in Scranton is also here. So we've had a terrific couple of months as Pennsylvanians. As you know, we flipped a Senate seat blue after helping elect John Fetterman, who won all 67 counties in Pennsylvania. And how about John Fetterman? The courage he showed against a mean Republican who ran a vicious campaign against him. Now, Dr. Oz might not have known the difference between a veggie tray and a crudité, but Pennsylvania voters knew the difference between John Fetterman's courage and Dr. Oz's cowardice. That's right, because Pennsylvanian women knew that we didn't need local officials telling us what to do with our bodies. When Dr. Oz said that the decision to have an abortion should be between a woman, her doctor, and local elected officials, women in Pennsylvania said, hell no. We voted for John Fetterman and Josh Shapiro, and women across the country overwhelmingly voted to protect their reproductive rights as well. And you can bet that that's the theme that we're going to carry through in 2024. For the first time in Pennsylvania history, we also elected a Democratic governor, our fantastic former Attorney General Josh Shapiro, to succeed our last Democratic governor. It's always been 8 years Dem, 8 years Republican, no more, because Pennsylvania voters want candidates who deliver, and they know that Dems deliver. And that is worth clapping over. But today we're here to recognize the impact that the DNC's work had on our electoral success in 2022, while also being realistic that the hard work is required ahead, starting right now, to make sure the DNC continues to be effective to lay the groundwork for 2024. A lot has changed in the past 2 years. For me personally, I'm grateful to see things getting back to normal. 2 of my children had weddings this year, which we attended in person. My youngest child, our youngest of 6, graduated from college in person. And we are all here together in person celebrating our achievements. So a lot has changed in a short period of time, thanks to President Biden and congressional Democrats who you helped elect. And as a Pennsylvanian, I can tell you we're very proud of the work of our DNC, because today's DNC is the best it's ever been. Thanks to Chair Jamie Harrison and our incredible team, we're stronger, we're smarter, and we're more strategic in working to support President Biden. And our incredible finance team, including DNC CFO Patrick Stauffer. Our fundraising team, led by Chris Korg, Michael Pratt, and Colleen Coffey, made sure we exceeded our fundraising goals so we could reach voters across the country. We tightened our messaging, and we made sure people knew what was at stake. We need to look no further than the success of 2022 to see that the country was listening. We had record fundraising in 2022 election cycle, including more than $170 million from grassroots supporters. That grassroots number, which makes up more than 60% of our total fundraising, that's a huge accomplishment, and that should be commended. We also had the biggest year ever with our sustainers, who make recurring online donations. The 3rd year in a row, we saw record-setting numbers. Now, Chris just said a few moments ago that we had more than 900,000 grassroots donors. 900,000 this cycle alone, with the average gift being $29. The investment in the DNC made to grow our grassroots program created a pathway into the party that didn't previously exist. I want to pause and acknowledge that some of you may have heard this information before, but it's worth repeating. These are historic achievements that led to victory, and they are forming the foundation of our strategy as we look to 2024. We want to continue to engage donors in every state across the country who are excited about President Biden and his agenda, because everything that they are working to achieve means different things to different people. It's personal to all of us. For instance, losing national protection of reproductive rights means my 4 daughters will have their rights taken away when they want to choose when and how to have a family. But by flipping Pennsylvania blue in this last election, it also meant that those reproductive rights will be protected at a state level. And when we pass legislation like the Respect for Marriage Act, my oldest nephew knows that his nearly decades-long relationship will have the same protections afforded to as heterosexual couples. When President Biden champions the strength of labor unions, our family steel manufacturing business, which is a union factory, is positively affected. When we defend Ukrainians, our Ukrainian-American population in Pennsylvania will feel seen and protected. Look, we still have a long way to go, but we are making so much progress. Remember, just 2 years ago when President Biden and Vice President Harris were sworn into office, 9 million people were out of work. 9 million people. The unemployment rate was 6.3%, and hundreds and thousands of small businesses had closed their doors. But President Biden and congressional Democrats worked quickly to help Americans everywhere, and now nearly 11 million jobs have been created. Unemployment is a record 50-year low, and 2021 and 2022 were the best 2 years for small business applications on record. President Biden ran for office to restore the soul of the nation, to unite our country, and to build the economy from the middle out and the bottom up. And the DNC was there to support him every step of the way. And after taking back the White House, the House, and the Senate in 2020, we knew how important it was to hold on to the House and the Senate to keep Biden-Harris agenda moving forward. So the DNC left it all in the field, excuse me, in 2022, including making record investments excuse me, of $90 million. We had more than 300 people on the DNC midterm team. That is the largest and biggest and best team ever. We made a $27 million cash transfer to the DSCC and the DCCC, the largest ever during a midterm. And in the final 2 weeks of the campaign, President Biden requested an additional $10 million injection to carry us to the finish line. And given how close most of those races were, I can tell you it made a difference. Needless to say, there's so much more to be proud of as we begin 2023. And it's important to remember that we put everything we had towards the midterms, including our financial resources. Our hard work starts now. It's time to rebuild and continue supporting the infrastructure and capacity building that only the DNC can provide. We have a Q1 budget plan to do just that. We're laser focused on how financial resources early in the cycle can support staff, operational capacity, and tech and infrastructure that's needed as we look ahead to holding on to the White House. We're talking about data. We're talking about tech and tools used by millions of Democratic campaigns. For example, in 2022, more than 500,000 Democratic volunteers and staffers from 12,000 different campaigns use our national voter file to talk to voters. That tech and infrastructure forms the foundation of our party's success. And right now, we have the strongest team we have ever had at the beginning of a presidential cycle. We're continuing our ongoing commitment to state parties through the SPP and the Red State programs, and these are serious decisions. But given the effectiveness and resolve of this team, I have no doubt we'll be able to meet this moment and demonstrate once again the unique and essential impact that the DNC has on our party's success. The past 2 years as your DNC treasurer has been incredible, thanks to all of you. and your hard work. And we have worked so hard and accomplished so much. We believed in everything that was possible, and we'll continue to keep that hope alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Virginia. I'd like now to recognize Co-Chair Jim Roosevelt to present the report of the Rules and Bylaws Committee. Before I do, I want to thank Jim and his co-chair Mignon Moore and each member of the Rules and Bylaws Committee for all the work they've put into the process of determining our 2024 presidential nominating calendar. Mignon is not going to be with us today, but I ask each and every one of you to keep her and her family in your prayers, send healing thoughts. She's just such an invaluable part of our team. You know, folks, I continue to be impressed by the level of commitment and the thoughtfulness that we've seen from this committee throughout this process. The DNC is grateful for the work that the Rules and Bylaws Committee, the work that you've done, and the time that you have put into this process. After months and months of hard work, with 20 state parties initially expressing interest, numerous public meetings and forums, and of course with the consultation of President Biden, I am proud to say that this committee put together a calendar proposal that reflects our values and will strengthen our party. This calendar does what is long overdue. It expands the number of voices in the early window, and it elevates diverse communities that are at the core of the Democratic Party. It puts black voters at the front of the process in South Carolina. It keeps Nevada, where Latinos have been building power by lifting their voices, and New Hampshire, where we can continue the tradition of small government by and for the people at the front of the process. And it adds Michigan, the heartland, where unions built the middle class of this nation, and Georgia, the forefront of the New South. Folks, the Democratic Party looks like America, and so does this proposal. As a South Carolinian, I'm of course grateful that President Biden and the Rules and Bylaws Committee chose South Carolina. But I look at this calendar as a whole. The pre-window starts with 3 small states, South Carolina, followed 3 days later by New Hampshire and Nevada, allowing campaigns of all sizes to compete and build momentum before moving to bigger battleground states in Georgia and Michigan. This is going to be critical to a general election. Now, I know you all have heard me say this before, but this is something that we can all truly be proud of. A calendar proposal that reflects the best of our party, that continues to make us stronger and elevates the backbone of our party. Folks, think about this. 40% of enslaved people came to this country, and they came through the port of Charleston. There's a statistic that 90% of African Americans in this nation can trace one ancestor back to South Carolina. We know how important the Latino voice has been in terms of building this America. It is elevated by pushing Nevada to the front of the line. We understand what labor has done and how it has built the middle class in this country. By having Nevada and Michigan integral into this, we elevate the voices of labor. And when we go to Michigan, folks, it's not only labor. We got black folks, we got Latino folks, but we also have a large Muslim American population in Michigan as well. I can tell you this, the Republicans are envious of this calendar because they can't do it like we do. They can't. This calendar reflects the best of who we are as a nation, and it sends a powerful message all across the country. So once again, I am so grateful for the work of this committee, and I'm proud of the work that you have done. And with that, I will turn it over to the one and only Jim Roosevelt.
Thank you, Chair Harrison, for your kind introduction. Mignon and I truly appreciate the opportunity to serve as co-chairs of the Rules and Bylaws Committee. Mignon was looking forward to joining us today, but was unfortunately called away due to a family emergency, as you acknowledged. I know we are all sending her and her family well wishes. The report which was sent to you includes 2 items. First, a package of 5 proposed waivers to Rule 12A, which establishes waivers for state-run primaries in 5 states: South Carolina on February 3, 2024, New Hampshire and Nevada on February 6, Georgia on February 13, and Michigan on February 27. And a recommendation regarding a proposed bylaws amendment to provide DNC membership for the chair of the Rural Council if they are not already a DNC member, as well as one additional Rural Council member of a different gender. I know that many of you have tuned into our virtual RBC meetings. We've become a long-run series on YouTube. You've joined us as we've met in person. You've been kept apprised of the early window discussion through the news, more news than we've ever had for a Rules and Bylaws Committee. But I'd like to share a bit about the process we undertook as we developed the waivers before you today. The members of the Rules and Bylaws Committee have met 11 times over the course of the past year. This has been a long process, but an open and a fair one. In addition to these meetings, we have held 4 public listening sessions, hosted a web portal for public comment, engaged in 2 days of state party presentations, and after 20 states initially expressed interest, read through 17 comprehensive applications and subsequent follow-up documents. And then we had our day jobs. Our extensive meetings, discussion, and research resulted in the proposed package of waivers before you today. While this has certainly been a time-intensive pursuit, the gravity of this decision merited the level of commitment that our members have shown. South Carolina, Nevada, and Michigan have all completed their waiver requirements to the satisfaction of the Rules and Bylaws Committee. Last week, the committee extended the waiver deadlines for meeting the stipulations expressed in the waivers for Georgia and New Hampshire until June 3, 2023. Mignon and I have been so delighted to see the overwhelming excitement for the proposed window, which mirrors our own sentiments. We are deeply proud of the committee for executing on the vision of the President as laid out for us. And as we approach this momentous occasion, I can tell you that he remains a strong supporter of this bold window. This proposed window was the right thing to do in support of our President, and also because it moves our party forward. The new window shows that we are a party that adapts and grows, as Chair Harrison has alluded. Yes. As a package, on the whole, it reflects our values and paints a bright picture of our diverse and wonderful nation. And importantly, it gives us a strong process for selecting the strongest Democratic nominee, and that's what it's all about. Each of the 20 applicants offered strong cases for participating in the early window. The President recognizes that a regular review of our window is important for continually ensuring we're reflecting the values of our party, and the Rules and Bylaws Committee concurred that we will reopen an application process for the early window well ahead of the 2028 nominating calendar. So this is the proposal for 2024. 2028, we will look at what we've learned and what the situation demands. In addition to the 5 waivers before you today, the Rules and Bylaws Committee also reviewed a bylaws amendment submitted by Lucas Freilich to grant DNC membership to the chair of the Rural Caucus if they are not already a member, as well as an additional member of a different gender. The Rules and Bylaws Committee does not recommend this bylaws change, but it did have a very full conversation, and we agreed that we should continue to investigate how to best support and recognize and acknowledge the inclusion of councils in DNC participation. That completes the report of the Rules and Bylaws Committee, but I'd like to take a moment and thank Chair Harrison for providing the committee with the support to make this difficult decision, and our members of the Rules and Bylaws Committee for their thoughtfulness and commitment to creating a bold window that's worth fighting for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. The Rules and Bylaws Committee has presented its report, and it's moved its approval by the membership. Is there any discussion? We do have discussion. I see. Let's hear from the great state of Iowa, Chair Rita Hart.
I'm not Chair Rita Hart.
Oh, Scott Brennan.
But you
Former chair.
You will hear from Chair Hart. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Scott Brennan. I'm a resident of West Des Moines, Iowa. I have proudly served twice as Iowa's State Party Chair and now serve on the Rules and Bylaws Committee and have for a number of years. I am here today to speak against the motion before you. I do not do so as a knee-jerk reaction to my state being removed from the nominating calendar, but from a genuine concern that the proposed calendar and the vast uncertainty surrounding it cannot be resolved in a timely fashion. Last month, the Rules and Bylaws Committee passed a calendar framework for the 2024 presidential nominating calendar that was dropped on the committee. But in all honesty, the committee adjourned with nothing actually settled. Last week, extensions were granted to 2 of the 5 favored pre-window states because 2 states cannot comply with the conditions of the waiver. I would be remiss if I did not say we are creating a situation of continued uncertainty that will drag on throughout 2023. We can vote on this calendar, we can approve this calendar, but we will leave here with absolutely nothing settled. I say this not to attempt to bluster or imply any threat, but simply to acknowledge the facts. In 2007, the matter of the contest dates and order was not settled until the 11th hour. There is a limited amount of calendar real estate, conflicting state laws, and a GOP calendar that no longer bears any resemblance to ours. If passed as prologue, some states proposed here will spend the coming year maneuvering for their preferred position, and we have created an opportunity for other states to take a run at encroaching the pre-window. I simply ask everyone on this committee to consider the ongoing consequences and situations we will create as a result of the actions we take here today. Thank you all.
We'll also hear from other members in Iowa, Chair Rita Hart and Jan Bauer.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Jan Bauer. I'm an appointed DNC member from Ames, Iowa, appointed twice by President Obama and again by President Biden. I'm an original member of President Obama's Iowa Caucus leadership team and was appointed to the Unity Reform Commission. I've been a part of discussions over the years about how to effect change in the nominating calendar and how to move it to become more accessible and inclusive. This year, as a part of the application process for the pre-window waiver, Iowa Democrats proposed historic changes to the caucuses. We recognized the caucuses as they were, no longer aligned with 21st century democracy, and that they had no alternative but to reimagine the Iowa caucuses as a vote by mail state party run contest. The process we proposed allowed for increased accessibility, a straightforward and an understandable process, and flexibility as the date, while complying with Iowa, while complying with Iowa law. We believed and still believe that Iowa is an important part of the solution to an early nominating calendar by providing flexibility with its new process. Our proposed reforms went above and beyond anything suggested by previous reform commissions. We unfortunately were given no credit for our commitment to ending caucuses as they had been conducted for the past 50 years, and giving all Iowa Democrats the opportunity to participate in caucuses over an extended vote by mail period. We feel this was a mistake that disregards the intentional work of many hardworking Democrats over the past 2 decades to reform our nominating process, and hope you will reconsider as you vote today. The Rules and Bylaws Committee has already committed to re-examining the calendar for 2028, and we support that effort. But the clock is ticking toward 2024, and we need to have the matter of the calendar settled, which this motion does not accomplish. I urge my fellow committee members today to vote against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Hart.
Let's see if I can get this back in here. There we go. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Rita Hart. I'm a farmer. I live near Wheatland, Iowa, a rural town of about 800 people. I'm also the newly elected chair of the Iowa Democratic Party, and I rise today to speak in opposition to the motion before us. Iowa has been put in a position that makes it impossible to comply with both DNC rules and our own state law, which has exactly 0 chance of being changed by the Republican legislature. In addition, I submit that it's vital that small rural states like Iowa do not lose our voice in the presidential nominating process. Democrats cannot forget about entire groups of voters in the heart of the Midwest without doing significant damage to the party. This proposal has no representation in the proposed calendar of states in the central or mountain time zones. Let me tell you, Republicans in Iowa have already seized the opportunity to double down on their caucuses and on their commitment to Iowa as an early state. At the same time, they feed the narrative that Democrats have turned their backs on Iowa and on rural America. In the coming weeks, our state will be flooded with Republican hopefuls, spreading this damaging message to every corner of our state. I vigorously support our president, and I support the principles that guided the calendar review process. But I cannot support a proposal that further erodes Democratic Party support in my state and the entire middle part of the country. Iowans value common sense, and it just doesn't make sense to entirely remove representation from rural Midwestern states in the pre-window. So I hope you will consider this when casting your votes today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll now hear from folks from the great state of New Hampshire. Joanne Dowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, DNC, fellow DNC members. My name is Joanne Dowdell. It has been a long year for the Rules and Bylaws Committee that has led us here today, and a lot has been said about New Hampshire in the process. So I want to set this record straight on a few things as a very proud member of the DNC representing New Hampshire, a proud member of the Rules and Bylaws Committee, and as a Black woman. First and foremost, I would like to thank co-chairs Mignon and Roosevelt for their leadership of the Rules and Bylaws Committee through this process. I'd also like to thank my RBC members, co-RBC members, for really taking this task on in earnest and having very deep and respectful conversations. It's been a very fraught process at times, but at the end, we can all sit down and break bread and have really nice conversation. And it's been really a wonderful experience from that perspective. And I would like to thank the staff that has really helped marshal the process. I agree with my colleagues that it is essential that we lift up diverse voices in our presidential selection process. And President Biden's call to move up South Carolina and add Georgia accomplishes this. But respecting our state law and lifting up diverse voices need not be mutually exclusive. So when some members say they are frustrated or that we are attacking them by standing up for New Hampshire, it is frustrating. It is frustrating because the DNC is set to punish us despite the fact we don't have the ability to unilaterally change law, state law. We are frustrated because the Republicans in the state are already weaponizing this proposed calendar and using it to attack Democrats up and down the ballot. And we are frustrated because as many times as we say it, no one seems to listen when we say that this will only hurt President Biden in our purple battleground state. And as a longtime supporter of the president, my focus is really on 2024 and making sure that he is reelected. This is not, in this moment, about New Hampshire's history or our pride. This is about state law that we cannot unilaterally change. In a Republican-led governor and state house, it is beyond our ability to change state law. And it's about the unintended consequences the DNC's actions could have on President Biden's reelection campaign. I appreciate the confidence that the president put in me by asking me to serve on the DNC, and I am proud to be a longtime supporter of his in New Hampshire. That is why I want to make these points one final time. If Democrats withhold resources from our state until the general election, it will hurt our ability to build a competitive, coordinated campaign and give Republicans the opportunity to out-organize us up and down the ballot. If President Biden doesn't file for the New Hampshire primary, it could provide an opening for an insurgent candidate to rise in the state and potentially win the first presidential primary of 2024, something that no one in this room wants to see. And if the DNC can't find a way to work with us in the confines of our state law, Republicans will hold this attack of the state law over us until November 2024 and possibly beyond. We've had some hard conversations, and I'm sure we'll have more ahead of us. We stand ready to help President Biden win both the primary and the general election. I'm not asking you to vote against the president, because I will share, it broke my heart to vote against his proposed calendar. But I could not vote against Granite Staters or to vote to violate our state law. Thank you so much for your time. Good day.
Thank you, Joanne. And members, in order to make sure that we can accommodate all of our speakers, I'm going to ask you to please keep your comments concise. Thank you. Senator Donna Soucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Donna Soucy, and I'm here in a number of capacities as a DNC member, as the Democratic leader of the New Hampshire State Senate, and as an early endorser of President Biden in our primary. And I worked on his campaign to help him get elected in the state of New Hampshire, and had the very proud distinction and honor of my life serving as a presidential elector for our great president. But I want to give you some context about New Hampshire's political environment and the no-win position the DNC has put us in. Right now in New Hampshire, Republicans have a trifecta with control of the governorship, the House, and the Senate. So when the DNC required that New Hampshire change its state laws to participate in the early primary window, you can imagine how our Republican leaders reacted. Not well. New Hampshire is a state that has one of the highest voter participation rates in the country, the highest of any state in the proposed early primary window. In fact, in 2020, 74.2% of Granite Staters turned out to vote. And in my career in the state Senate, I have worked to ensure increased access to voting in the state of New Hampshire. Still, New Hampshire Democrats are trying to act in good faith to show that we are aligned with the DNC, most notably on the issue of early voting. This past week, the New Hampshire Senate held a hearing on a bill that I've introduced several times over now to allow no-excuse absentee balloting, a bill that is endorsed by all of our Democratic senators, our House leadership, and by our federal delegation. Unfortunately, because of the balance of power in New Hampshire, we know how the votes will line up and how this story will end. When we held majorities in the state Senate and in the state House, we did pass a bill to allow for early absentee voting, no excuse voting. Our governor, Governor Sununu, vetoed it. And in 2021, every one of my Republican colleagues in the Senate voted against it and publicly opposed it. We strongly believe we have shown our commitment to expanding voting access and voting rights, but we cannot unilaterally change state law to comply with these rules. What's worse, I believe the DNC's move to punish Democrats in our state will make it harder, not easier, for us to expand voting rights in the future. Republicans have just a 4-seat advantage over Democrats in the state Senate, but our ability to retake the Senate majority will be monumentally harder by having to respond to what has already begun, daily attacks from our Republican colleagues in the state of New Hampshire. We all know, each and every one of us, you've heard many people comment today, how important and how critical state legislatures are. We are the last line of defense in protecting rights, voting rights, abortion access rights, so many of the rights that we hope to expand in our country. But when it comes to this, we need to have state legislatures. We should not be punished in the state of New Hampshire for doing something that we cannot accomplish. That punishment will not just be reflected in the number of delegates at a convention, but that punishment will be reflected in the number of seats in our legislature. I hope you'll consider this as you cast your vote today. It is truly critical in the state of New Hampshire. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Once again, I'm going to remind members we need to keep our conversations or our remarks as tight as we possibly can. Chairman Buckler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Ray Buckley, chair of the New Hampshire Democratic Party, and a member of the DNC for the past 24 years, and the first time ever standing and speaking at this microphone. I don't stand here easily, but I stand here with great passion. While we all know the outcome of today's vote, please hear me out. Since I was 8 years old, I have woken every morning thinking about how I'm going to help elect Democrats. And that is what I want to talk to you about today, electing Democrats. That's actually what our job is, electing Democrats. Now, let me start by repeating one more time, make sure everyone hears it. New Hampshire Democrats want President Biden to be reelected and carry New Hampshire in November 2024. We are proud of President Biden's historic record of accomplishment, and we support his commitment of lifting up black voters and giving a stronger voice to the great diversity of our party. As only the third openly gay state chair ever in the history of this party, I know a little bit about diversity. That has been the record of my life, is lifting up and supporting it. That's why we so strongly supported in 2006 Nevada and South Carolina being pre-window. We look forward to working with the RBC in the coming months to address the challenges that this proposal creates. But I'm here to talk about what it actually means to our entire ticket in the key battleground state in 2024. As the state party chair in New Hampshire, my focus is November 2024 to help President Biden carry New Hampshire, win the open race for governor, keep our 2 battleground congressional seats, and regain our legislative majorities. Folks, we only just started winning elections in the last couple decades due to the hard work of our party. The state of New Hampshire is 30% Democrat, 30% Republican, and 40% independent. We are a battleground state where every election is close, but we have still carried 7 out of the 8 last presidential races. We've carried 9 out of the last 14 governor's races, 4 out of the last 5 U.S. Senate races. Try to get to 51 in the U.S. Senate without Jeanne Shaheen and Maggie Hassan. We've elected 15 out of 18 in the last congressional races. Try to win back the majority in 2024 without Chris Pappas and Annie Kuster. Our legislative majorities are so close it's divided by 3. And that includes in our House where there's 400 members. We are a 3-seat minority. Every vote matters in New Hampshire. Victories are determined by a small number of independent swing voters. Those voters are already being bombarded by the Republicans who are saying that Democrats have abandoned New Hampshire. That's why I'm especially concerned about the RBC proposal. The RBC knows full well that New Hampshire Democrats could not possibly unilaterally change state laws. They knew that the Republican leaders in the state would not bend to their will. And even knowing this, the RBC still decided that New Hampshire Democrats should be set up for failure. In doing so, they not only just handed Republicans a substantial weapon, there is also talk of further DNC sanctions. Sanctions that include withholding essential resources and support that our battleground ticket will need in November of 2024. All because of what the Republicans are doing, not due to anything that we have done. We should all be able to agree that this isn't how we do things. We should all be able to agree that it doesn't make sense to punish a state's Democratic ticket for something that is completely out of their control. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will now recognize Congresswoman Debbie Dingell from the great state of Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, as we stand here, I first want to remember Senator Carl Levin, who actually began this debate more than 30 years ago. Today is a product of years of discussion and work. Here's a reality. No one state should have a lock on going first. The reality is early states get the visits, and not only from the candidates, but from the media and so many other influence makers. They get to know what the issues are that matter in that state. And those issues are always part of the federal policy dialogue and action that happens. More importantly, the issues that are discussed, that were put forth in the early states, need to be reflective of the issues that will make the difference and win elections in November. And this plan does. The early states in their collectiveness must reflect the diversity and the values of our country on as many issues as possible. The proposal before us makes this significant change. Michigan picks presidents. For the last 4 decades, the candidate who wins Michigan almost always wins the presidency. We are a purple state, and as Democrats, we need to invest in a state like us early so that we do carry it, so we do win the White House in November. 6 years ago, I told a lot of you Donald Trump was going to win Michigan. And you know what? You all thought I was crazy. And you know why? You weren't in the union halls, you weren't in the black churches, you weren't in the farms, and you weren't in the farmers' markets. In 2020, you listened, and we won it back. It's undeniable that the earlier the Democratic Party can get started in states like this, the better. Why Michigan this year? As I said, it's diverse, but it's the most diverse battleground state there is. We grow things and we make things. Our farmers have the second most diverse agricultural product in the country. In our state, you see the diversity of experiences across America, racial diversity, political diversity, the diversity of geography, industry, and labor. We have a significant black community, which Virgie Rollins will talk about and attest to. Hispanic community. We're Irish, we're Polish, we're Ukrainian, Asian American, and so many more. Jewish. We have one of the most significant Jewish populations of the country, but the largest Arab American. Catholics, Protestants, atheists, and a wide range of retail political opportunities. If you weren't here, you could be at the Plymouth Ice Sculpture today in 30 degrees below zero, and we could see how tough the candidates are.
It ain't that cold in South Carolina right now.
I know, that's why we want to see how tough they are. We got ice fishing and snow sledding, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day. You got one county fair, we got them all over the place. We got so many traditions. There's a parade every weekend. There's a retail place in any county in Michigan. You can meet people and talk about the issues that matter to them. The issues discussed at the kitchen tables in Michigan throughout our communities every single night are the issues that determine how voters will vote in November. And I got a message. Donald Trump understood that in 2016, and too many Democrats didn't. We will deliver Michigan in 2024 by listening, understanding, and a lot of hard work. Efforts in understanding what voters want that will help throughout the heartland and the nation. We are overdue in changing this primary calendar to ensure it reflects the range of ideas, thoughts, and hopes of Americans throughout this country. By voting for this primary calendar, we will establish a presidential nominating process that truly reflects the diversity of all America and ensures that we as Democrats showcase the issues that matter the most in determining the outcome of the November elections. And my final thought, no one state should have a lock. We do need to revisit this every 4 years.
Okay, because I know that we got a lot of people who have trains and planes and all that to keep, so I'm gonna start tightening this up. You're gonna hear the gavel go, okay? Artie Blanco from the great state of Nevada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I am gonna try to keep it short. Artie Blanco from the battleground state of Nevada, battle-born, first-generation Mexican-American, second-generation union member and activist, and proud second-generation Democrat. For the past year, Nevada has made a strong case that increasing the diversity of the early presidential primary calendar is in the long-term best interest of this Democratic Party. We applaud President Biden and the DNC for the open process that had led us to this most diverse calendar we have ever seen. Nevada is a majority-minority, union-strong, battle-born ground state. Scheduled for the first Tuesday in February following South Carolina by 3 days. Nevada's Democratic coalition that delivered the Senate majority in 2022 with the only Latina in the U.S. Senate and has secured presidential victories for the past 4 cycles. Our voters represent the future of this Democratic Party. Working class Latino Americans, Black Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islander Americans, Native Americans, and white Americans. They don't call Las Vegas the 9th island for no reason. And we cannot win without prioritizing this diverse blue-collar coalition that Nevada represents today. Fellow Democrats, you can't say you're for elevating this coalition's voice, but still ask us to wait our turn. I'm done waiting. So join me today to meet this moment where we are at and vote yes for this proposal, and we will re-elect President Biden in 2024.
Thank you. Okay, folks, already helped to show you how to do it. Let's see if we can shave some more time off it. Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise as Alan Clendenin, the chairman of the DNC Southern Caucus, in support of the calendar changes put forward by the RBC. South Carolina is an excellent choice to lead the Democrats into victory in 2024. It is not only a small state, it is a rural state, and it has a population that reflects not only the Democrats of the United States of America, but all of the United States of America. The road to victory is going to go through the South. We are rising, and between South Carolina and putting Georgia on the map, we will achieve victory in 2024 and beyond. Thank you. I'm going to keep it short because I cannot follow the great Congresswoman from Michigan. We don't have ice fishing in the South, but maybe one day I'll come to Michigan and try that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. You're even better. Trav Robertson, great state of South Carolina.
Thank you,
Well, I
Mr.
breathe,
Chairman.
I hope.
My fellow delegates, I want to say that Ray Buckley, you have my utmost respect and love. Scott, Ross, I love you all very much. Lavora, I adore you. To our friends in Nevada, Judith, I adore you as well. This is about family, and we can't forget that. But I stand here on behalf of the South Carolina delegation right here and our members in the South, Mr. Chairman, supporting the president's proposal that he's put forth. The African American community in South Carolina has always been at the crossroads of the history of this country. The fact is some of it's good, some of it's bad. But it is a place where the inhumane stories have become stories of the heroic. In South Carolina, Briggs versus Elliott was the precursor to Brown versus the Board of Education. In 1954, Sarah Mae Fleming refused to give up her seat on SC&G's bus, and it was the quiet spark that created a movement that culminated in the civil rights. It was in South Carolina that Dizzy Gillespie taught himself to blow a horn and it transformed music. The blinding of Isaac Woodard forced and compelled Harry Truman to desegregate all federal buildings and the United States Army. It is a place where Chadwick Boseman transformed a comic book character that is inspiring people across the world. And it is a place where the parishioners of Mother Emanuel walked into a courtroom and looked at the man who had brought violence into their church and said, "We forgive you." You see, President Biden understood the dichotomy of the relationship of South Carolina and the African American community. The good, the bad, but always transformative. And that's why he put forth this proposal, ladies and gentlemen. And those who have been dismissive, who say that it is reward to one human being, does so under a false and archaic premise. And that is that the African American community is a monolithic voting bloc subject to the whims of one person. And I suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that those people who are making that claim are the very individuals that can't put together a campaign that effectively communicates with the African American community. And in conclusion, I will get there, Mr. Chairman. I've waited a long time.
I'm giving you deference just because you know my mama. You gotta hurry up. Hurry up.
But the reality is this. 60 to 65% of traditional Democratic voters in the state of South Carolina don't live in one county. You have to come into our state and work in urban settings and rural settings in order to put together an organization to win. It forces candidates to create organizations, but most importantly, it fulfills the obligations set forth by the Democratic National Committee and the RBC. That is, a campaign comes in, puts together an organization, communicates effectively with our voters. Just give me one more second. Communicates effectively with our voters and doesn't bankrupt the candidate. And I would like to conclude by saying that I've got two sisters, a mother and a daddy, and we fight like hell, but they're still my family. And that's the way I feel about all of you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we'll hear from the chair of the great state of Georgia and the congresswoman who represents the district that Congressman John Lewis represented for so long, the great Nikema Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start by thanking the Rules and Bylaws Committee for voting in December to advance an early primary calendar that is not only representative of this entire country, but includes Georgia to this full body for a vote, because we should all vote on this. Just days after the initial decision was announced, y'all, Georgia re-elected our senator, Reverend Raphael Warnock, to a full 6-year term, proving once again that Georgia will continue to shape the trajectory of our country for many, many years to come. Y'all, for far too long, our party's dominating calendar has not reflected what this country actually looks like. Our country is diverse in race, geography, background, and thought, and so is our party. And y'all, Georgia reflects that. From our urban center in Atlanta to our many rural counties to our fast-growing suburbs. After today, Mr. Chairman, we can proudly say that we've sought to elevate the voices that have far too long been sidelined. Georgia isn't a blue state, y'all, but we're not a red state either. I like to think that we're periwinkle. There's still more work to be done. This is a fight that's worth fighting for, though, because our voters, y'all, our voters in this country are worth fighting for, and so are our democratic values. You may have seen our youngest DNC member, Elena Reeves, standing alongside President Biden yesterday, rocking her Atlanta Influences Everything shirt. Because y'all, Georgia indeed influences everything, from the civil rights movement to the political landscape of today, and y'all, we're gonna continue for many years to come. We know that the true north of the Democratic Party is in the Deep South. Finally, as always, I'm thinking of my friend, my mentor and predecessor, the late Congressman John Lewis, and thinking about how proud he must be watching us in this moment. Mr. Lewis often said that we may not have chosen the time, but the time has chosen us. And at this point in our nation's history, this point in our Democratic Party, the time has clearly chosen the state of Georgia, and Georgia continues to meet the moment. From delivering not one but 2 U.S. senators to delivering our 16 electoral college votes for President Joe Biden. Y'all, I'm Congresswoman Nikema Williams, and I'm the very proud chairwoman of the Democratic Party of Georgia.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Pete Lee from the great state of Oregon.
Chair Harrison, I promise to do you proud. Watch me. My name is Pete Lee. I'm Vice Chair for the Democratic Party of Oregon and Board Member Emeritus of the DNC Environment and Climate Crisis Council. So just briefly, a little context. When my parents emigrated to the US about 50 years ago, we were not around for things like the horrors of slavery that I learned more about in Charleston. That said, just because we weren't here, we came to America, we came Americans. We are proud Americans. But in order to truly be a proud American, it also means that my family and I now own the sins of our country's history, and that includes slavery. So I just want to make sure that we don't bury the lead on something really important. It is so important that our communities of color have an early voice in our elections, and this proposal does just that. We can't go back in time to fix the mistakes of our past, but by golly, this will help us, allow us to put our hands on that arc of history and bend it toward justice. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from John Verdejo from the great state of North Carolina.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you so much. John Verdejo from the great state of North Carolina. Indeed, I stand here in support of the proposal, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I got something to do after this, and we need to get going. But one thing I wanted to say real quickly is this, and this does not even apply to politics, but just in real life in general. And it just is this phrase, right? That this is the way it has always been done. This is the way it has always been done. In the months and weeks and days leading up to this, that's a constant, at least to me anyway, that's a constant theme I've always heard. This is the way it has always been done. As a Black Latino, Puerto Rican descent living in North Carolina, been there for 20 plus years, you gotta forgive me and forgive us, because we tend to hear things a whole lot differently. What I hear sometimes in these proposals when it comes to this, right, is this cannot be done. It's not naive to me where, as African Americans, as Latinos, we're good for some things. Oh yeah, we're good for organizing. We're good for this, that, and the third. We're good for everything else. But when it comes to, South Carolina being first to do this, oh, well, I'm gonna go there. There's elephant in the room. Hey, it is what it is. And I hear that, oh, well, struggle. Struggle is written in the South, even in North Carolina right now. I just happened to read the ad, the newspaper as I'm sitting here. The Supreme Court in North Carolina is looking to look again at voting, gerrymandering, after the Republicans has taken over the courts down there. Yeah, we know struggle, and we know a lot of it. So, I'm going to wrap this up because, again, I got something to do, and I know you have too, but I'll just leave you with this. Be careful. Be careful, because we hear it, and all respect to the past and what you guys have done, we can do it too. Just be careful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, John. We'll now hear from the great Bishop Leah Daughtry, who knows a whole lot about the DNC and has been through this a time or two before. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Leah Daughtry, and I am from the great state of New York. And I am an at-large member. Yes, New York, Brooklyn-born, Brooklyn-bred. Mr. Chairman, I've worked on my first presidential campaign in the state of New Hampshire when I was a student at Dartmouth College, and I worked on the presidential campaign of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. New Hampshire is one of my favorite places. I go every year. I have the granite of New Hampshire in my muscles and my brain, and so I love New Hampshire. I've been a member of the Rules and Bylaws Committee since President Obama appointed me in 2012, and I just want to remind you as we're listening to all of this, what our process has been. We decided we want to build a different calendar, or at least examine the calendar. And so we had 11 meetings to review this process. We heard from 20 states who filed applications. And we come to these rules meetings at our own expense, on our own dime, to participate in this process. And our goal was to yield the best calendar possible for our party and to produce the best possible nominee. That's what our goal was. We came to this with no preconceived notions. We wanted to hear, and we had no idea who was going to apply. But we listened to those applications, each one of them excellent, each one of them presented with passion and commitment. And in the end, we decided that we wanted a calendar that would reflect who our party is now, and not who our party was back then. I've heard a lot about this being punishment, that we're attempting to punish somebody. This was not about punishment. This was about acknowledgement. Acknowledging that Black and Latino voters are the committed base of our party. and deserve to have a say in the crafting of who our nominee is. As many people who have run for the presidency can tell you, you cannot win our nomination if you cannot campaign and win Black and Latino voters. That's just the truth. And let me just dispel a notion that Black and Latino voters are somehow all urban voters. We are rural, we farm, we make things, as Congresswoman Dingell says, we make things and we grow things. So when we talk about South Carolina, we're talking about rural voters. When we talk about Nevada, we're talking about people who make things. Michigan, we make things. So I want to dispel this, that somehow by changing this calendar, we're discounting rural voters. No, we're not. We need to expand our idea of who we are as Black and brown folks. Folks, I've heard a lot about the state law and how the state law somehow gives some people divine right of privilege. Now, the Supreme Court has been clear that the party has the right to set its rules in the way that the party wants to set its rules. And you can have a law that says you're first. Well, then I'm from New York. I'm going to petition my governor that we should be first. And you petition your governor. So we're going to have 56 state parties that all have a state law that says they should be first. None of that is more important than what the party says it wants in its process. Folks, I'm an oldest child. It was just me and my parents for a long time, and so I was always at the head of the line. And then my sisters arrived, and my brother arrived, and I had to make room. It meant that I wasn't always the first to get served. It meant that I had to shift my place at the table to make room for my siblings. I would submit that family requires, we like to say we're a family. If we're really a family, it means that some folk got to shift to make room at the table for others. We cannot say that Black voters and Latino voters are important and matter and make us wait. It's not fair, it's not right. And so I want to urge you to support this proposal. I want to urge you to vote for change, because change is overdue, but change is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. And our last comment before we move from Mo Alethi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mo Alethi from Washington, D.C. I'm a first-time DNC member, first-time RBC member. For my first term as a DNC and RBC member, to be part of this historic movement, I feel like a kid at Disneyland. That might say more about my childhood, Mr. Chair. But look, the other day, our vice president asked us to consider what we fight for, who we are. She said, if we know who we are, we know what we're going to fight for. So who are we? What is a Democrat? I've been thinking about that a lot since I started on the RBC 13 months ago. And I'll tell you why I'm a Democrat. I'm a Democrat because I believe every single American deserves access to opportunity. They deserve a shot. Whether you live in the East or the West or the Midwest or the South, you deserve a shot. Whether you're Black or Latino or Asian or Native, you deserve a shot. Whether you're gay or straight or bi or trans or whoever you are, you deserve a shot. And where Democrats come in is because we get that not everyone gets access to opportunity. Not everybody has the same chance as their neighbor to take that shot. That sometimes there are obstacles in the way and someone needs to block and tackle. We believe everybody has a right to get to the top of that ladder of opportunity. But what we do as Democrats is say, once you get to the top, don't you dare pull that ladder up behind you. Somebody else deserves a chance to grab onto that first rung and climb up the ladder as high as they can go. That's what we do as Democrats. Every day, that's what we fight for. That's what our president fights for. That's what we demand and expect our candidates be. And now we have a process that reflects that. Now we have a process that says everybody gets opportunity to have their voice heard in this process. Nobody has to wait anymore to have their voice heard in this process. No community has to wait anymore to have a voice in this process. And so I am very proud to be part of this conversation today. This is a conversation that has been going on, let's be honest, more than just the last 13 months. Like true progressives, we have been inching forward in this progress for quite some time. In 2008, the wisdom of the DNC said, 2 states ain't enough. We need to bring a few more into the process. And every year we move further and further. It's progress. What we have done this time is say the progress is going to continue, not just this time, but next time and the time after that. We're going to make sure that everyone who deserves that opportunity gets to be heard. And just like this process, which the bishop just outlined, where people from every corner of this party and every corner of this country were heard, they're going to continue to be heard. Now, I want to make one last point, Mr. Chair, that I think is an important one.
We're ready to vote.
Yeah. One last point, and I want to say this to my friends in Iowa and New Hampshire, because you guys have played such a magical role in our history. But I heard Iowa say something a little while ago about how nothing's going to be decided coming out of this, because there are 2 states where the waiver will extend. And to my dear friend Ray, who you and I have been through many battles together up in the very cold, cold battlefields of New Hampshire, who said that the RBC has turned its back on New Hampshire, that the RBC has abandoned New Hampshire. Let me be very clear about something. The RBC and the president have not turned our back on New Hampshire. We're putting our trust and our faith in New Hampshire. When in the history of this country have Democrats said, we can't change a law? When have we, and I'm looking at my friends in the South especially, when have we as Democrats ever said an old state law is going to prevent progress, is going to prevent new voices from being heard, Mr. Chairman? That's not the history of this party. That is the tradition of the Democratic Party. If we want to talk about tradition, that is our tradition. Taking on entrenched powers, taking on entrenched laws that deny people's voices from being heard. And so we, as Democrats, are putting our trust in the Georgia Democratic Party and the New Hampshire Democratic Party, because you know what? Y'all have earned that trust. You all have shown us time and time again, you know how to win tough fights. You know how to beat Republicans in your states. We're putting our trust in you to show the rest of the country that the Democratic Party is moving forward, that we are pushing for progress, that we are bringing more voices into the process. We're honoring your state's tradition. We're bringing new states into the process. We are doing what we always do. We're moving forward, and we're giving more people opportunity.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you.
With that, we will move to a vote on the motion to approve the report of the Rules and Bylaws Committee. All those in favor of approving the report say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the report of the Rules and Bylaws Committee has been adopted. Congratulations. Congratulations. Next, folks. Next. Next. Next, I have the pleasure, my friends, of introducing another history maker, the governor of this Commonwealth, Josh Shapiro. Folks, Governor Shapiro brings people together to solve problems. He stands up against the powerful in favor of Pennsylvanians and is focused on improving how government works for the people. Pennsylvanians elected Governor Shapiro because they know he's good and he's going to deliver for them, and I'm thrilled that he is here with us today. I also want to thank him for hosting us here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania this week. Now, everyone, please join me in welcoming a star of the Democratic Party. Please welcome Governor Josh Shapiro.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. How good does it feel to be in the city where the Philadelphia Eagles play? The soon-to-be Super Bowl champs. I must say I was impressed that the Vice President of the United States showed up yesterday after what we did to her 49ers. But she was a good sport, and we were so grateful she was here. I hear some boos out there. I hear it. Let me say how grateful I am to be here before you today. And let me say thank you to Chairman Harrison, not just for leading this party with the great strength that he does, not just for inviting me here today, but for investing in our party here in Pennsylvania, together with Virginia McGregor and each and every member of the DNC. And I just want to say, look at the results. We got a 51st Democratic U.S. Senator in Washington. And we are just a few days away from having a Democratic majority in our state House of Representatives for the first time in more than a decade. Your investment matters. Thank you so very much. I want to thank all of you for being here and doing the hard work necessary to strengthen our democracy, to move our Commonwealth and our country forward. And I want to give a special thanks to our great Democratic Party chairman here in Pennsylvania and his leadership team, Senator Sharif Street. As our nation's history shows, democracy is not a given. It's a constant work in progress. We've been reminded of that in recent years. I'm so proud to be here with all of you today after having been chosen by the good people of Pennsylvania to be their 48th governor and to have the opportunity to continue to do this meaningful work. Pennsylvanians have shown throughout our history that when it is all on the line, we roll up our sleeves, we come together, and we do the hard work to move our country forward. And we showed that again this past November. And by the way, hear me on this. It wasn't just Democrats who did that hard work. People from all different walks of life, rural, urban, suburban communities, people from all parties, united under the vision that we laid out for the Commonwealth. We built a coalition by showing up everywhere and treating all people with respect. I visited Pennsylvanians in their homes and in their union halls, our places of worship, and our community centers. I walked our main streets and I visited our big cities and our farms. And most importantly, I listened and I learned from the good people of Pennsylvania. And in the process of that, we not only earned a record number of votes, but we won in places where Democrats for too long had not competed effectively, where too many pundits, and let's speak frankly, too many people within our own party had written off those communities. Places like Beaver County, out where Rich Fitzgerald lives, and Luzerne County in the northeastern part of our state, those places we won again
and we showed that a Democrat can compete there. That is our future pathway to success and opportunity. And together, most importantly, beyond any political candidates winning, what we showed as a unified coalition here in the Commonwealth is that when it is all on the line, we could all come together to resoundingly reject extremism right here in Pennsylvania. Here in our Commonwealth, hope defeated fear. Unity triumphed over division, and we proved together that we value our freedoms and we're willing to do the hard work necessary to protect our fundamental rights. As Democrats, I believe we need to meet people where they are, and we need to work to deliver for them. We need to go back to the places where people build community and focus on the issues that actually matter to people. On the campaign trail and in my first few weeks in office, I talked about our plans for good schools. You listening, Becky and Randy? I know you're out there. Safe communities, an economy that lifts everybody up, and advancing the cause of real freedom here in Pennsylvania. The kind of real freedom that comes when we invest real resources in that young child's public school to make sure she has a shot. The kind of real freedom that comes when we recognize her right to both be safe and also feel safe in her community, so we invest in comprehensive public safety to make sure she gets to live past her 18th birthday. That's real freedom. The kind of real freedom that comes when we create pathways to new opportunity and investing in creating jobs, especially green energy jobs in the new economy, where we protect the right to organize and expand union membership for all who want to join a union here in Pennsylvania. The kind of real freedom that comes when you get to marry who you love. That's real freedom. The kind of real freedom that comes when we trust women to make decisions over their own bodies. That's real freedom. The kind of real freedom that builds on the work of giants like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Congressman Lewis, the great Congressman Clyburn, who you'll hear from, to make sure that every person has the right to vote in this country and no one takes that away from them. That is real freedom. And that is what we are fighting for. And that is what Democrats stand for. We are the party of real freedom. Let me hear you on that. We are the party of real freedom. And that is why I spent my first 2 weeks in office focused on protecting real freedom, on creating real opportunity for all Pennsylvanians. On day one, I signed an executive order immediately making 92% of all state government jobs, that's 65,000 jobs here in the Commonwealth, open to anyone with the skills ready to serve, whether or not they have a college degree. We did this to give people a shot and to break down the barriers of opportunity. In week one, we created a one-stop shop for businesses so Pennsylvanians have the support they need to be able to grow a business and watch it thrive right here in the Commonwealth, from our Main Street corridors to our farmlands. In week two, we gave Pennsylvania nurses and teachers and firefighters, I know you're out there, Mr. Kelly, and small business owners, the confidence that our state will work as hard for them as they do for us by acting to eliminate delays on all the occupational licenses and permits and certificates, giving people that shot. All of these actions send a clear message about my administration. We are committed to making real differences in people's lives and advancing that real freedom that I just talked about. Real freedom is really about building opportunity
for real people, tearing down the barriers that they face every day. You see, unlike some folks on the other side, I want to tell you what I believe. I believe government can be a force, a productive force for good in making people's lives better. I know we share that belief. I know we do. Here in Pennsylvania, by opening up the doors of opportunity, by breaking down those barriers, we can make our economy work for everyone again. And we're investing in things that Pennsylvanians care about: good schools, safe communities, an economy that lifts everybody up. Let me give you a concrete example of this. Just yesterday, I had the distinct honor, as so many of you did, of being with the president and the vice president in West Philly. They were there to announce historic investments to replace harmful lead pipes in the city of Philadelphia. These pipes harm our families, especially in communities of color. These are the kinds of investments that Democrats make to give people a shot, to make sure people live in safe and healthy communities, where our children grow up healthy and are able to reach their God-given potential. And it shows, Democrats, that we give a damn about people and that we're willing to make the investments to help them lead productive, healthy, and safe lives. And so I want to thank President Biden, Vice President Harris, Senator Casey, and others who are delivering for all of us, especially those forgotten communities. Look, moving our nation forward, creating opportunities, defending democracy, these are not tasks that any one president or person or state can complete alone. It will require all of us to build on that work. Listen, my own faith teaches me that no one is required to complete the task, but neither are we free to refrain from it. Meaning each of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, get in the game, and do our part. And that's the story of our democracy. And our democracy story, our chapter after chapter, has been written by people doing the hard work, not just folks with titles next to their names, but ordinary Americans rising up, demanding more, seeking justice, pursuing change. That has been the American story. That has been the story of our Democratic Party. And I believe that means each of us has a responsibility to do this hard and necessary work to build and strengthen our democracy that was born just a few blocks from here 246 years ago. I wanted to come here today to look you all in the eye and to say thank you for being the backbone of our party. And thank you for your willingness to do this hard work. Because after all, we're all stewards of our American story and our democracy. All of us, from Chairman Harrison to every single member of this DNC. And when we show up, when we accept the responsibility that people have bestowed upon us to be this next link in the chain of progress, well, then there's nothing that can stop us from doing great things for all Americans. The people of Pennsylvania showed up for us in this last election. And as I said before, your investment was critical for that. By focusing on the issues that matter most, we now have the chance to show up for them too. Always remember this. We Democrats, we are the party of opportunity, and we are the party of real freedom. Hear me on this. Do not let anyone on the other side take that ground from us. We are proud patriots in the Democratic Party. Never, ever, ever take a backseat to anyone when it comes to patriotism, because I know we value our freedom. We cherish our democracy, and I know we all love this country, and we are willing to do the hard work to perfect our union. And I also know that when it's all on the line, we step up. Because on the other side, there's a whole bunch of extremists who violate these sacred principles of freedom and democracy and love of country. We stand ready each and every day to defend it and to stand up and defeat that extremism. We have taken up this challenge to continue the work of those who came before us, those whose shoulders that we stand on today, to advance opportunity and to fight for real freedom. That is our challenge. That is our calling. And that is the next chapter in our American story, a story that we Democrats and all Americans are writing each and every day. And those, opportunity, freedom, those are the values of this Democratic Party. I am proud to be a governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I am proud to be a Democrat, and I'm especially proud to be here with all of you today. We have consistently proven that we know how to win elections. We've shown we know how to govern, and now we are showing that we can bring all Americans together behind that simple message of freedom and opportunity. Thank you all so very much for having me. God bless you, and let's keep this important work going. Thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Let's thank the governor again for being here and for his tremendous leadership. Members, it's hard to find words to express how proud I am of this body. Taking bold action like we did today is no easy task, and I know it's hard, particularly, as Trav mentioned, in a family. But I want to thank each and every one of you for the dignified manner in which you conducted yourselves and conducted the process. The reporters can tell you the RNC meeting a few weeks ago was not like this. It was Ringling Brothers Circus reborn. But, you know, I learned how to conduct myself in politics from one of the greats. Everything that I know about politics, I learned at the knee of the one and only legendary Jim Clyburn. And it's amazing how full circle life is, because one of the first really big political moments I had was in 2006 when South Carolina and Nevada, Jim Clyburn and Harry Reid worked with Howard Dean and the Rules and Bylaws Committee in order to add those two states and the diverse populations into this window. That was one of the first political things I did as a young staffer on the Hill. We come full circle today, and we change that schedule yet again, moving up Nevada and South Carolina and those diverse voices. Someone who I thought should probably come here today is here. He is a man that I call my political father. And I thought it was nothing but appropriate to have him join this august body to give thoughts, reflections, and remarks, particularly as we celebrate Black History Month. Everybody, stand on your feet, please. Please welcome our Assistant Democratic Leader, Congressman Jim Clyburn.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Jamie, for being so kind to invite me here today, and thanks to all of you for this great decision that you have made today. I think that we will demonstrate to the entire world, not just this country, that this party is the party of the people, and we thank you so much for this decision. I listened as the governor spoke, and I thought about when he made reference to the founding of the country, the establishment of this democracy. And I thought about the little pamphlet that many of you may have read, written back as the country was trying to give birth to itself. A guy named Thomas Paine, who was not an American, wrote about that founding. These are times that try men's souls. Summer soldiers and sunshine patriots will, in the crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands it now deserves the thanks of man and woman, for tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. These are times that will try men's and women's souls. We have a duty to our children and grandchildren to do the things that are necessary to preserve this democracy, pass it on to them in much better shape than we found it. And we cannot do that by shrinking from the battle. And we cannot do that unless we, as Democrats, remain true to who and what we are. This is the party of opportunity, and as our president says, possibilities. The other side are full of extremism and grievances. Let them grieve and let us lead. That's what this is all about. Now, I want to leave you. One train has been canceled. I'm on another one. I'm going to try to make that one. I want to leave you with a little personal experience. My dad was a fundamentalist minister who would teach us, my two brothers and me, by examples. He would say to us all the time, you have to learn to lead not just by precept, but by example. And he would set up little circumstances that we would be tested by. We would never know a lesson was coming. We would just sit there and wait. Now, the folks here from South Carolina have probably heard me tell this story before, and I thank them so much for tolerating me today. But the rest of y'all hadn't heard it. My dad had a 1937 Chevrolet. It was a real good car. You could drive into a telegram pole, back up, wouldn't be a dent in it, just keep on going. But for some reason, it seemed as if that car always knew when Saturday came. Because it looked like every Saturday, we'd be going down to Mr. Singleton, our neighborhood mechanic, to get that car running for another week. Now, you all may not know this, but you know, those of us who grew up in rural South Carolina, every neighborhood had a mechanic. We always knew who it was, the guy with the big chinaberry tree with a pulley hanging out of it. And so we went to Mr. Singleton. And just as Mr. Singleton put the pulley on the front of that car, pulled it so he could get under it to get it running for another week, my two brothers and I started playing near the car. And my dad came over and said, now, boys, I don't want you playing near this car. I have no idea how strong this chain is. It may pop. One of you may get hurt. Go out across the field and play. And we did. We weren't gone long before we got into a little discussion. Now, those of you who may have seen this would call it a fight. It was not a fight. It was a physical discussion. And we didn't know it, but my dad was watching us. And when he thought that discussion had gone on long enough, He called the three of us over to him, and he stood us in front of him, and he was sitting there on one of these old drink crates, little wooden crate, and he had in his hands a piece of cord string. He took that cord string and he handed it first to my brother Charles. Said, Charles, I want you to pop this string. Charles struggled it. He couldn't pop it. He then took it back and said, John, you're 2 years older. You are stronger. You pop the string. John struggled, and he couldn't pop it. He then took it back and he gave it to me. He said, James, you're the oldest. You're the strongest. You pop the string. I struggled, and I couldn't pop it. He then took that piece of cord string back, and he put it in the palms of his hands, and he began to rub his hands together, and the more he rubbed, the more friction he created. And the more friction he created, the more unraveled that cord string became. And it was not long before that cord string was in 3 pieces. He gave 1 piece to Charles, 1 to John, and 1 to me. He said, now, sons, pop the strings. With very little effort, all 3 of us popped the strings. He said, now, sons, I want this to be a lesson to you for as long as you live. Don't you let the little disagreements that crop up among you cause so much friction until it separates you. Because if you do, the world will pop you apart, and you may never know why. We as Democrats can have our differences. That's the way we grow. I know about differences. I stayed married to the same woman for 58 years. So I know about differences. But we should not let these differences separate us. Let's learn from each other. Let's grow with each other. And let's remain strong as a party, as strong as that strong cord string was before my dad's friction pulled it apart. We are a good party. We are a great party. We are what the people of this country need. Let us not allow any individual differences to keep us from providing what the people need. Thank you for all you do, and Godspeed.
Y'all now understand why I say I lived a blessed life. Because each and every day, I got a chance to learn a little bit more wisdom from the great Jim Clyburn. Congressman, thank you again for all you do for this party. My friends, I now want to introduce a special message from Pennsylvania's newest Senator, John Fetterman. That sounds good, doesn't it, folks? Senator John Fetterman. John understands the struggles that families across Pennsylvania are going through, and he has the backbone to take on Republicans' extreme agenda. So now let's hear a message from Senator John Fetterman.
Hello, it's an honor to welcome all of you here to the best Commonwealth in the country, this DNC meeting. I'm sorry I couldn't make their meeting in person, but I'm glad to speak with you virtually. I want to thank you all for the work that you're willing to do to make sure Democrats win races up and down the ballot. I'm sure I don't need to tell you how important our upcoming races in Pennsylvania are. We can't forget that in 2023. There are important local races, countywide races, and critical statewide judicial races on the ballot this year. We must make sure that Democrats win in 2023. And in 2024, we really need to win Pennsylvania. We need it for the White House, the Senate, and the races up and down the ballot. I said this in 2020. Whoever wins Pennsylvania will win the White House. And I believe that's still true now. we have a lot of work to do in this upcoming year. Pennsylvania went blue in 2022, and we need to make sure that it happens again in 2023 and in 2024. I'm ready to do this work with all of you, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Senator Fetterman. Folks, I'm going to try to speed through our remaining work because I know we got to get you all out of here. As announced in the Secretary's 30-day meeting notice, we have several at-large vacancies to fill at this meeting. I've nominated a group of individuals that reflect the diversity and strengths of our party. They hail from all 4 regions and represent close allies of the President and coalition stakeholders. The Secretary's 7-day mailing included information about the following individuals that I've nominated to fill the 4 DNC at-large vacancies. Diane Robertson of North Carolina, Janie Lear Stein of California, Brian Renfro of D.C., and Greg Kelly of Illinois. There being no other nominations submitted for these positions, the chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules and elect them as a slate by acclamation. Do we have a second? We have a second. Motion and a second to suspend the rules and elect my slate by acclamation. All those in favor of electing? Aye. All those opposed? In the opinion of the chair, we have more than 2/3 of the members voting in support of the motion to suspend the rules and elect the slate, and therefore the motion is adopted. Let's give these folks a round of applause. Next, my friends, it is time to honor someone who has been a leader in our party, in our country, someone who is a friend and a mentor, and many of us got an opportunity to see her on Thursday night. Madam Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. Folks, it was a pleasure to have her join us for our meeting, and now we're going to take time, for those of you who did not get an opportunity to see it, to really reflect on the legacy of the greatest speaker of all time, the GOAT, Nancy D. Pelosi.
She's probably the most effective speaker in U.S. history.
The leader, and people are willing to follow.
I cannot speak highly enough of Nancy Pelosi. She literally stood up to the President of the United States.
It's this combination of courage and grace.
An iron fist in a Gucci glove.
One of the most powerful politicians in American history.
She will be ranked as the greatest speaker in U.S. history, and she pulled it off and got health care. That's a boss.
Nancy Pelosi, a longtime Democratic Party fundraiser who has been endorsed by the party's leadership.
She believed from her years watching her father get elected. The campaign was won on the ground, that it was the work you did block by block, finding your volunteers, finding each individual voter.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. The most urgent health issue facing our community is AIDS.
When I first came to Congress, my one sentence was, I came here to fight against HIV and AIDS. Well, my colleagues said, why did you say such a thing? And I said, because that's why I came here.
Pelosi has spent her 15 years in the House crusading for liberal causes, abortion rights, AIDS funding, the environment.
She always talks about her top 3 priorities are the children, the children, the children.
Children, children, children. That's why I came to Congress.
The children, she always repeats it. The children, the children.
Let's hear it for the children. We're here for the children.
It's now my privilege to present the gavel of the United States House of Representatives to the first woman speaker in our history, the gentlelady from California, Nancy Pelosi.
I don't go to the floor and lose.
One thing that Nancy Pelosi has never been accused of is bringing a knife to a gunfight.
We'll go through the gate's closed, we'll go over the fence is too high, we'll pole vault in. If that doesn't work, we'll parachute in, but we're going to get health care reform passed for the American people.
It would not have been a bill with the president's signature if Nancy Pelosi wasn't the Speaker of the House.
She was the face of the Democratic opposition to Trump.
The day after the election, we didn't agonize, we organized.
She had the toughness, the tenacity to stand up to him in some very blunt terms.
Pelosi had his number.
We have to have border security.
Mr. President, the fact is you do not have the votes for a wall, no matter where you start.
Donald Trump, to this day, does not realize how embarrassed he was by her.
Pelosi supporters say having her at the top of the party will energize women voters who are key to Democratic victories.
When women succeed, America succeeds.
The Honorable Nancy Pelosi would raise her right hand.
When she arrived in Congress in 1987, there were 23 women in the 435-member House of Representatives.
That's a very, very, very small group.
It gives me great pride to serve as Speaker of the most diverse House of Representatives in the history of our country, with a record-shattering 122 women. 122 women. We the people, one country, one destiny. It has been with great pride in my 35 years in the House I have seen this body grow more reflective of our great nation. Now we must move boldly into the future. For me, the hours come for a new generation to lead the Democratic caucus that I so deeply respect. A new day is dawning on the horizon, and I look forward, always forward, to the unfolding story of our nation, of many becoming one, and always an unfinished mission to make the dreams of today the reality of tomorrow.
The iconic, the heroic, the legendary Speaker Emerita, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi. Speaker Emerita Pelosi will go down in history as the greatest speaker of all time. It's an honor to stand on your broad shoulders.
When the Mount Rushmore of American politics is made, Nancy Pelosi will be on it. We are so grateful for all that the Speaker has done and will continue to do. And this year, at the next DNC meeting that we have this summer, fall, we will be awarding the first ever Speaker Nancy D. Pelosi Chairs Award. And so we will be sending information to all of you to make nominations for those individuals in our party who you feel are deserving of such a tremendous honor. Let's once again give an appreciation to Speaker Pelosi. Next, folks, I am going to move to our, again, I'm going to get you out of here lightning fast. The ratification of standing committee member appointments. The Secretary's 7-day mailing also included the names of individuals that I'm appointing to fill 3 vacancies on the Credentials Committee. Otto Lee of California, Brianta Maxwell of South Carolina, and Javier Valdez of Washington. I thank these members for agreeing to serve on these committees and ask for your support in ratifying these appointments. The chair will entertain a motion to approve these 3 appointments. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second to approve the appointment of Otto Lee, Brianta Maxwell, and Javier Valdez to the Credentials Committee. All those in favor of ratifying the chair's appointment say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you for your support, and thank you, members, for serving on the Credentials Committee. Folks, as it relates to my remarks, this is also, we made a lot of history here today, and there's also going to be a lot of history because these are going to be the shortest chair's remarks you have ever heard. But I do want to say thank you to a number of folks before we close out today. I want to take a special moment to thank our gracious hosts, Chairman Street, Vice Chair Grove, and the Pennsylvania Democratic Party. Thank you all for the hospitality and welcoming us to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Good luck in the Super Bowl. I also want to acknowledge the Temple University grad students who are on strike just down the road. Democrats are the pro-labor party, and we stand with union workers. I also want to take this opportunity. I talked with the chair of the Alabama Democratic Party. because Selma, we know, holds such an important place in our heart, but was impacted, like a lot of the South recently, by some disastrous tornadoes. But the folks in Selma want you to know that they're still open for business. So they're still going to do celebration of its civil rights past and all that it has done to make America free. So keep the folks in Selma in your heart, make contributions to help them rebuild, but make sure that if you are planning to go to Selma to celebrate the civil rights movement, please continue to have that in your plans. Folks, there's so much to celebrate. And in our midterms, as I said, these were the most historic midterms that any incumbent president has had since 1934. In terms of making sure that we grew our majority in the Senate instead of losing seats, mitigating losses in the House of Representatives. We should have kept our majority, but guess what? It's been, as I said, all weekend long. They are just Airbnb-ing the House right now, y'all. We're taking it back in 24. But we saw tremendous growth in state legislatures and with our governors as well. There's a lot to be proud of, but there's so much more that we have to do as we go into the 2023 elections and the 2024 elections. We're going to spend the time making sure that we review 2022, the strengths, our weaknesses, we fill the holes, and we do that this year. And I want to, and I pledge this to all of you, go around the country, to our red states, to our blue states, to our purple states, making sure that we are having conversations from young to old, to all of our various communities, Black, Brown, API, Native, the Latino communities. I am going to see our Democrats abroad in the 1st of March. And I hope you all extend invitations, not only to me, but to our officers up here. These are our road warriors who have traveled the country with me, singing the praises of the Democratic Party. But it's time that we rebuild in some places, and strengthen in others. And that's what we're going to spend a lot of time. And we're going to celebrate the achievements of this tremendous administration. Joe Biden has put his stamp not only on this party, but on the nation. And that is something to be celebrated, because he sees us, he hears us, he values each and every one of us. And that's really important. And it's important for not just us in this room to know that, but all of the American people. So I'm proud of this Democratic Party. I'm so proud of each and every one of you for putting your heart and soul into the work that we do each and every day. There's a lot to celebrate. There's a lot that we have been able to achieve. There's a lot that we have been able to deliver for the American people. And there's so much more that we can do. With that, I am going to introduce our Secretary, Jason Ray. Again, I told you, shortest chair's remarks you've ever gotten. I am going to introduce our Secretary, Jason Ray, to make any announcements.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 3 brief announcements. One, after this meeting is the Lunar New Year celebration, so we hope that you'll join us for that. I know many of you have asked about the date for our next meeting. Well, I hope that you will meet me in St. Louis for our 2023 fall meeting, October 5th to 7th. Again, we'll be meeting at next DNC meeting is October 5th to 7th in St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis.
And finally, there's one special person here at this meeting who works harder than anyone that we know, and that is Chair Harrison, who is celebrating his birthday tomorrow. And I believe we have a special birthday message queued up.
There we go. I appreciate that special message. Like, Jamie, sit your ass down. It's time to go. Oh. Folks, I just, we got pastors, and I need to watch my mouth. Oh, God, no. Thank you, my friends. Thank you. I think this week I have broken the Guinness book of world records for the most happy birthdays in a week. Folks, now as we close, I want to introduce clergy leader Hugh Taft Morales to deliver our benediction. Hugh serves as the leader of the Philadelphia Ethical Society and the Baltimore Ethical Society and is a member of the Ethical Action Committee of the American Ethical Union. Hugh taught philosophy and history for 25 years in Washington, D.C., after which he transitioned into ethical culture leadership. Hugh graduated with a B.A. cum laude from Yale University, Bula Bula, and an M.A. in philosophy from the University of Kent at Canterbury. He lives in Maryland with his wife, Maureen, a specialist in Latin America for the Congressional Research Service. Please welcome Hugh Taft Morales.
Dear members of the Democratic National Committee, thank you. I'm humbled to offer you this moment of inspiration and introspection. I invite you all to just take a deep breath. Let it out. Put all your tasks aside for a moment to contemplate the important space and time that we share together. We know that our democracy is fragile and is being tested. You in this room carry the future on your shoulders. You lift up the fragile hopes and precious dreams of every citizen, young and old, of all colors, backgrounds, faith perspectives, or life philosophies. It's your work, wisdom, and integrity that will determine if our system of government brings out the best of all citizens and of our collective. In these times of division, let us revive civic grace. May each of us here draw from our own cultural roots, personal relationships, or faith traditions the strength and resilience to do this work. May we always be inclusive and welcoming, opening to every person meaningful participation in our democracy. In particular, may we understand that those who say that politics is the art of the possible are aiming too low. We know we have to do more. We cannot just do what is possible. We must change what is possible. Only then will power and resources be shared more equitably. Only then will every citizen have the tools to become a leader. As the great Settlement House pioneer Jane Addams explained, democracy believes that the person at the bottom may realize his aim or her aim only through an unfolding of their own being. Today we are together unfolding as individuals, communities, and a nation. May we always see our history clearly so that we can build a just and noble future. I will close with the words of educator and activist Mary McLeod Bethune. We have all fought for America with all her imperfections, not so much for what she is, but for what we know she can be. Amen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morales. I want to thank the amazing staff. We could not do this without the tremendous staff that we have here. The staff here at the Sheraton Hotel, the staff at the DNC, the Secretary's office, the ASDC staff, finance, operations, party affairs, our amazing parliamentarian Helen McFadden. Special thanks, particularly the folks who worked on rules and bylaws, Veronica, Sam, Roger, Mary Beth, Nick, Kristen, Daniel Wessel. Thank you all for all that you do. Folks, that concludes our business for today's DNC meeting. Before we go, I want to take a moment to acknowledge our caucus and council chairs who worked so hard to engage our constituencies and organize information meetings for you all. Thank you all for what you do. Celebration to our new members and our experienced members. Thank you for wrapping up an amazing year. And I want to just say once again, thank you all. Thank you for the unwavering support that you have given to me and my family as we do the business of this party. With that, with all the business completed as such, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second? All in favor? Opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for a great historic meeting.
Great job. Thank you. Really, really great job. Thank you. It was a great week. No, it was. Yeah, you got to be exhausted.